Beer, corned beef, and four-leaf clover t-shirts all have one thing in common: St. Patrick's Day. The next day, however, the beer is usually all used up and the t-shirts get returned, but there's still leftover corned beef in the fridge. Shenoa French from the Beef Culinary Innovation Center is here today to talk to us about what we can do with that leftover corned beef and what I hear is called the rustic corned beef and potato bake.
Absolutely.
Tell us about it.
Yes. So as you were saying, this recipe is actually designed as part of our Cook Once, Dine Twice.
Oh.
So it's ensuring or guaranteeing that you'll have leftovers to be able to do something with the next day or in a couple days.
Fantastic.
If you make this recipe, you'll have some leftover corned beef.
Sure.
And if you don't want to make the full recipe and you can just buy thick cut deli roast beef.
Okay.
Another part of this recipe is horseradish.
Oh.
And that's kind of an important part, so we'll talk through that in a bit.
Okay.
And then the other part is going to be the potato bake part.
Oh, okay.
So if you had leftover, you would have some of the red potatoes here.
Sure.
But if you didn't do the whole recipe, you can use frozen potatoes.
Oh,
and I'll talk about that here in
And
a
some
minute.
cheese.
And some cheese, yeah.
Fantastic.
Everybody needs cheese,
You
right?
gotta have cheese.
So what we're going to start with here is it calls for a tablespoon of butter divided.
Okay. All right.
So we're going to put a little bit of this butter in this pan.
Non-stick skillet of sorts.
Yeah, and we're really using the butter to go ahead and sweat out some of the onions
Gotcha.
and some of the thyme.
Okay.
So I'm going to throw half a cup of white onions in here.
Good.
If you want yellow, you can use whichever you prefer.
Very good.
Those just need to, they call it translucent, so they'll pretty much become clear.
Yeah.
The other thing we're going to throw in here is 2 teaspoons of thyme.
Ah.
And I think I've showed this guys before, but remember the most important thing when you're doing thyme is you go backwards and make sure it's fresh and everything will just peel right off.
It's one of the things I've learned. I impress my wife with that all the time. It's very impressive.
And if they stay on there, that means they're not ready, so just don't use them. So we'll throw that down
We
here.
will use them no time before their time.
Absolutely. So throw this in here.
All right. And we're just going to saute that a little bit.
Yeah, so you give it a couple minutes.
Right.
As I throwing onions all over the place here. Let that get nice and translucent.
Sure.
Kind of sweating your onions out.
Okay.
Brings a little flavor to them.
Yeah.
And then what we're going to do is we're going to move on and talk about this horseradish.
Yeah, what is that?
sauce. So this is part of the original recipe, and this is hot horseradish, butter, and green onions.
Really?
Yeah, so they call for 2 tablespoons reserved from the original recipe.
Okay.
Now, if you didn't make the original recipe, what you can do is use 2 tablespoons of creamy horseradish and then add like a half of a green onion or about a tablespoon of sliced green onions.
Get you the same effect.
It'll give you the same flavor that way if you don't want to do the whole thing.
Wow.
So what I'm going to do is add, this is almost a pound, it's 12 ounces
All right.
of corned beef. And like I said, you can use the leftover from the night before.
But you want to cut it in small chunks like that?
Yeah, kind of we call this rough chop. So the pieces, if you're going to buy it from the deli, make sure you get a thick cut from there and make sure they don't do too thin for sandwiches.
Okay.
Otherwise, it kind of just disappears in there. So almost a pound, about 12 ounces. We're going to add this to here.
All right.
This kind of gives you some of your
Mix
flavor.
it all together. Yeah, it does sound good. Yeah. Love horseradish.
And you can do as spicy or as mild as you want.
Very good.
Now that our onions are kind of working, what we're going to do is all of this is going to go into one big pan.
Ah, very good. All right.
So this kind of starts your reheating process, and
Gotcha.
it's make sure that when you're reheating meats and deli meats and that kind of stuff, that you want to take them to at least 165. And part of that, when we bake them, we'll do that, but that's that safe reheat temperature for deli meats and leftover
So about
dishes.
how much time would you expect this will likely take?
This one will bake, well, on the stovetop, you're not trying to get everything cooked. You just want to get everything incorporated.
Sure, okay.
So you're not going to be on the stove for more than 10 minutes, probably.
Okay, good.
So once this gets all mixed together, get our pieces back in there. What we're going to do is we're going to grab our baking dish, and you'll use a little bit of butter on the bottom here, and so it doesn't stick.
Okay.
And like I said, if you're using the leftover potatoes, they would have been whole.
Sure.
Just cut them in halves and then in quarters, so basically 8 wedges per potato. They get laid down, and then they show them in the picture that you can put them up and do a real cute fan around the edges too.
We won't worry about that.
Whatever you want to do. And then you take half of your Swiss cheese. You use a cup of Swiss cheese. Half of it goes down on the bottom, and so that gets laid down on the pan. Like I said, this side is frozen potatoes if you don't have the other ones from the grocery store.
Very good.
What we're going to do is we're going to take all of this and kind of mix it.
Oh, you're going to put it right on top. So
right on
it
top.
is kind of a casserole sort of
They call it that bake that we were.
Interesting. Huh, that's very different than anything I've seen with corned beef before.
Yeah, so this all gets in here, and the most important thing is that you pack it down.
Why is that?
This will make sure that it's all kind of firm together. Your juices will drop through it, and it also helps with the heating.
I see.
make sure that it heats evenly.
Gotcha.
So we're gonna push everything down.
And put some more cheese on it, I bet.
Yeah, you're trying to heat up those potatoes.
Gotcha.
Because if you don't pack it down, the heat won't transfer all the way down through them. And then, like you said, a little bit more cheese.
Always good.
Kind of sprinkle them evenly around the top.
Yeah.
And then what we're gonna do is take a piece of foil.
Ah. Let me grab that for you. I can do that part of it.
And just it goes on tight. I can tell you a little trick. If you pam the top of your foil, your cheese won't stick to it.
Really?
Yeah. So that's a nice little.
I'm gonna be a hero at home.
Get this good and tight so that kind of the potatoes are able to steam down there.
Okay.
And then it goes into a 350-degree oven, and it bakes. If you're using frozen potatoes, you need to bake it for 35 minutes. And if you're using room temperature, the other cooked potatoes, it's like 25.
Gotcha.
So you'll throw it in the oven, bake it with the foil on.
Yep.
About 25 minutes, 35 minutes, depending on which type of potatoes you use. And then you take the foil off and give it another 5 to 10 minutes. You want it bubbly and golden brown on the top.
Wow,
Yeah,
and this
then,
is what we have then.
Yeah, so we've put a nice portion of it here, and we talked about traditional St. Patrick's Day, there's always cabbage. And we didn't want to do just the big chunk of wedge cabbage or something like that. So we went ahead and roasted some Brussels sprouts. We put them in the oven right along with the bake. You can just throw it on the bottom shelf and bake them along there with you.
And let me just be clear to our audience, that is optional component. Brussels sprouts are optional.
Not
at least
in your
house
for you, but it is optional for everybody else, yes.
Well, thank you so much. What a creative dish. Thank you for sharing that with us. For this recipe and others like it, head to our website at cattlemen2cattlemen.org.